My name's Colton. I am the moderator. My main focus is in analytical writing, but enough about me. Let's have the main focus introduce themselves, starting with James.
I'm James Luceno. I've contributed a few books to the franchise over the years.
Well, I'm Matt Stover. I did Trigger Chapter Point, Revenge of the Sith, Luke Skywalker.
Hey folks, Abel G. Pena. When it comes to the dark side, probably what I'm best known for is Evil Never Dies, the Sith Dynasties, basically a history of the Sith.
It's a pretty knowledgeable panel, I would say. Moderate to high. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so very much for coming. First things first, before we start discussing, Sith and all that fun stuff, I want to go around and ask each of you, who is your favorite Sith? And then we'll go from there.
I'm gonna have to go with Bad Grandpa Sidious. Just because of his ability with subterfuge and the fact that he's got himself resurrected at the end, big surprise to everybody. I'll give an honorable mention though to Darth Tyrannus. I think that Dooku's undervalued in the franchise. I think that he could have risen to the top if he hadn't been blindsided by Sidious. So that's where I stand for that.
Well, most interesting one for me to write was Palpatine, of course. I enjoyed. I did some literary tricks in writing him in Revenge of the Sith that I'm still kind of proud of. And I talk about him a little bit in the annotated edition that I'm actually here to advertise. It's my sentimental favorite would be a guy I made up for Shadow Point, Carl Vassar. I put him in 2 books because and I didn't want somebody to kill him off. They take place like 20 years apart.
I'll give a shout out to Palpatine as well. One of my favorite quotes about him was, "Wheels within wheels within wheels was his way," and I think that's accurate. As far as some of the Sith that I worked on, probably my favorite is Darth Ruin. He was near and dear to my heart because he was sort of a philosopher. So, and not just that, he was a solipsist, right? So I thought that was sort of the epitome of what it meant to be a Sith. It's this egocentrism to the absolute nth degree. And so yeah, I'd say Darth Ruin.
I'd be curious. Darth Sidious? Raise hands for Sidious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Darth Bane? Oh,
A lot of things.
Revan?
Yeah, Revan.
Yeah.
Any Vergier fans?
Well, in my continuity, she's not a Sith.
Not as
Right, not to litigate any past.
I'm just saying.
Darth Nihilus? Jeez. Any other Darths that we haven't mentioned? Oh,
Vader, right?
Jar Jar.
Story for inside that I really enjoyed.
Admit.
Well, cool. All right. Take it over.
Well, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the Sith Code and how each of you sort of think about it in relation to writing characters. Which parts they use, which parts they ignore, as anyone does, and sort of how you implement it into your writing. If you do.
So, are you talking about Drew's the Sith?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of thing, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I was entirely aware of it.
We gotta remind you, but, I mean, I know some of it by heart, but not all of it. Anybody got it? Anybody wanna, please?
Peace is a lie, there is only passion. With passion I gain strength, through strength I gain power, through power I gain victory, through victory my chains are broken.
Yeah, they are.
Set me free.
Oh, my new favorite Sith.
I wish, very good at him. I only met him once. He's great.
Did he come up with those?
He wasn't at the meeting. I met him in the Indianapolis celebration. Pretty sure.
But I mean, in terms of writing, I think it's interesting because George Lucas was never really clear about the Sith. They were just the archenemy of the Jedi. It's like light and dark. But you have to give nuance to these characters. And one of the things that always interested me is that instead of perceiving the forces flowing through everything and connecting everything, the Sith were eager to break that chain and to introduce chaos. And once they introduced chaos, they could tactically insert themselves. So that's the way I approached it with Sidious, with Darth Plagueis, and other characters that I've written.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when I came across the Sith Litany. I believe it's the formal title, right? Something like that. Yeah, Sith Lords, right? I mean, my take on the Sith is actually, it's really similar to James. I'm trying to think of something interesting to say. Different from what he already did. I think of them, is there anybody, how many people here are old enough to remember a movie called Wall Street? It was really big. Okay. You remember Gordon Gekko? Great is good, right? That's Sith. They philosophically valorize selfishness. You know, that there's nothing more important than what you want right now. That's basic.
Yeah, so I thought about the Sith Code a decent amount when it first appeared, and for me, I actually thought it was a little too heroic for my taste. So I wanted my Sith to be evil through and through. What I tried to cook up was something that I thought was a little even more intense than that. So that was what I call the Creed of Ruin. I mentioned Jump Through just a second ago. And Ruin came out of the Jedi Master tradition, but he was a thinker, and so he has his own code, and he became a Sith. And so I thought I would use this code as a way to basically go against both the teachings of the Sith and the Jedi. So it starts with there is no passion, there's only obsession, and there is there is no knowledge, there is only conviction. So it goes against both the Sith and the Jedi code, and ultimately what it comes down to is that it comes to this conclusion that all that there is that matters is himself. And I think that is the epitome of Matt's.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was just thinking as we were talking that the fundamental distinction, really, as far as I can see, is that Jedi do things for people, Sith do things to people. That's what it comes down to. I mean, in terms of writing them, that's the way it works.
I don't think though that there's a psychopathic element to it. It's not like the dark triad, where these people are just narcissistic and psychopathic. I think there's more tactics involved. There's greed with a definite purpose. I think the Sith just didn't like the idea that the world or the natural order is a good thing. Like who says, let's just break that chain.
Things should be the way we want them.
Yeah, yeah, sort of, little like the tradition of black magic. Aleister Crowley used to do thou wilt will be the hold of the law. You know, you take over, take charge.
Well, wonderful, thank you.
Somebody had a hand.
We'll do
Okay, you do.
questions at the end, just so we
Yeah.
can keep going. Though I imagine we'll be doing a longer Q&A session than sort of normal for a panel. So with your focus in these villains, how do you personalize them? How do you make them not just a force of evil or a force of evil, but how do you make them more than just an antagonist and with a scary face with a red lightsaber?
Well, personally, what I do, one of my original series has a character who is definitely a bad one. He's absolutely a dark side. He's the main character, and but people like him because they understand why he acts that way. They understand why he's doing these terrible things to people, and so because I have this conviction, this idea in my head that the thing that really attracts people to a character is their struggle. It's how hard they're working to do whatever it is they're trying to do. And the specific goal isn't that important because you see somebody working really, really hard to do something, you kind of feel it, right? Or you either want to help them or you want to stop them. And so the trick for me for Sith is understanding exactly what that character is trying to do. With the exception of Palpatine, because Palpatine's motives beyond the acquisition of power are always obscure. I think it's a mistake, personally, to know too much about what he's thinking. The whole point is that nobody knows what he's thinking. That's the way I do it. Know what they want, and then people will like, okay, I believe it.
It's a challenge in literature as opposed to the movies. I remember once someone in Revenge of the Sith was asking George why General Grievous wore a cape, and George said, "Because he's evil." And that was it. That's all you needed. A black mask. In literature, you have to dig deeper. You have to allow people to find. That's what I say about not being psychopathic. You have to find the humanity even in an evil character.
Well, and that's actually a really good point. Is that the Sith, with always the exception of Palpatine, aren't actual monsters, and it's important to emphasize that these are people who are choosing. They're regular people who just decided that what they want is more important than anything else. But they're still people, and I think that's important. It's the hook there. Because otherwise, it might as well be an avalanche or something. It's that there's nothing personal.
These gentlemen are masters. I don't have much to add to what you give the Sith a goal and then some sympathetic reason for why they were justified in pursuing that goal, and
At least in their own mind.
In their own mind, exactly.
It keeps changing too, doesn't it? As more and more books come out, the Sith, the definition of the Sith keeps expanding, history keeps changing. Come a long way from Darth Vader, for A New Hope.
With expansive stories like Star Wars, there is often a chance that characters have different characterizations through a book or a show, depending on who's creating it. How do you sort of manage this network of changes and differences as writing through a franchise such as do you do a lot of like research beforehand, or do you just?
What might be easier for me to answer is Jim, because he's written a lot. I'm sorry, go.
Did you draw on Nietzsche a lot?
Yes.
In your thinking?
Some. I'm sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. I was going to answer your question and I have no idea.
I was asking, how do you sort of deal with like networks of?
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah, I did obsessive research, but I also decided entirely inside my head, arbitrarily, that the other stories that featured characters I was working on, I think of them as stories that were written by somebody who was there. It's their account of what happened, right?
Yeah.
It's like somebody might remember somebody who was at the same event, you and that person might remember it completely differently. So I just figure the little differences in characterization is just, depends on who's telling the story. It didn't work. I figured, there are people who will tell you that it doesn't work.
When I'd be working on sort of bringing together comprehensively all these stories about the Sith, all the lore that had been established about them, I just try to think about the most creative way to do that, and to make it compelling and interesting and believable. And so I took it as a personal challenge, but I love Star Wars enough that I tried to go the extra mile to actually not just put a Band-Aid on how to bring these disparate threads together, but to actually tell a compelling story about how did this Sith, go from, this characterization to this one. There has to be a story. You treat it as real. That's somebody's journey, and then you let it unfurl from there.
You think there are Sith counterparts of Sith in our history? When I did research, I started reading people like Machiavelli and, of course, Hitler, and you can go back in the past and pull out different historical figures who were considered evil. And there are things that unite them, but I'd be curious to know from some of you if you think there are who the Sith in our past were.
Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Epstein.
So that's interesting, because see, now I think we're getting over into psychopaths again. If you think Charles Manson was tactical and actually had some sense of where his evil was going to lead, or Dahmer.
Right.
See, I think it's big. I think the Sith are bigger than that. I think this is an individual kind of evil, a kind of a quirk in a personality, but not a tactical attempt to overthrow an existing order. You know what I mean?
Jim Jones perhaps because he had good intentions, but they were the road to ruin.
Mm-hmm. Emma?
Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad the Impaler. Okay.
And Brant.
Who?
And Brant.
Well, you're onto something there.
Well, I did write a book called Virtual Selves.
I mean, yeah, you're really onto something there, because this, just looking at her fiction, right, this, gathering of great minds and separating themselves from existing society, sort of, I don't know, is AI going to be the Sith in our...
Oh boy.
It already is.
That's the favorite book of most of the GOP caucus in Congress.
that AI is the new evil. We're probably getting off topic. Right. I'll shut up. Okay.
Is there sort of a favorite thing that you like to write when you were writing a Sith? Is there this is when you get a not told what to do, but when you get a thing, you get a story with this. is there a thing where you are just like, yes, I get to write X, Y, and Z when Sith come up, or is
I've always enjoyed writing, characters who are going against the grain, whether it was Tarkin or Palpatine, just because I think they're not golden boys. So there's a lot more latitude in what you can grant characters like that. Their motivations are different, and you get to, as a writer, you get to really dig deep and explore possibilities.
For me, the thing that makes Sith very much like that is that they're not calm, right? Their passion is their strength, isn't that in the litany? So my personal, what I like to write about is experiences that the characters themselves really feel. And the thing about the Sith is they feel this stuff. That's what I love about Anakin Skywalker. Is there is no tranquility there at all. There's no gentle allowing things to happen. It's just like, screw this. You die. The rest of you're going to be okay. I like that because I like that instant arbitrary passion. It's fun to write.
Yeah, it's certainly liberating to be able to write that stuff, and I think that when you have a villain like the Sith, it basically gives you license to explore, let's say, wisdom that might be considered to be unconventional. It's not spoken in polite society, but it's also sometimes you can only get that information from a Sith, if you will. And because sometimes there's too much concern with protection or something like that. And but they'll tell it slant. And so you have to be careful about how you process the information. I think that's one of the things that makes the Sith a very interesting voice for conveying certain information.
wonderful. Last question, and then we can just sort of talk until we do questions. Is when you are like planning on whatever the Sith is doing, do you have an end goal for like where they end up, and do you like start with their plan and then go from there, or do you start backwards and like work from their goal? If that makes sense.
It does make sense. But there's several ways to approach writing a novel. I know some people will have an idea in mind and start on page one without any thought of where the story is going. Some people might have a general idea, write something in what's the beginning of the story, and then jump to the middle, and then jump back to the beginning. With Star Wars, we were all required to hand in very detailed outlines. So you have to think through the story, and that story has to be submitted as an outline. So when you sit down to write the novel, after the outline has been approved, you know where the story is going. Some things can change, but basically that end is already baked into what you've thought through and outlined. That's the way it was for me.
It's the only way to make sure that you're not going to do something that is going to upset some other part of the franchise.
Matt and I both worked on a character. He may or may not be Sith. We can debate that. But it goes by the name of Lord Cronal or Black Hole. And it's when with that particular character, that was an interesting process because it was sort of hodgepodge type character built out of continuity, just sort of, along the way. And so that was maybe like you really have to sort of start from the end point and then retroactively go back and decide like who was this person going to be. That's how I did it. Matt might have approached it a different way.
No, that's exactly how I did. Because I was, the black hole and Word Chronology became the same entity in what, Star Wars Insider?
Yeah, I mean, in the source fiction.
Yeah, sort of. No, I knew what he was up to when I started the book. I mean, it was part of the plan. I couldn't have done it otherwise, because there was too much machination. I had to know exactly what the plan was.
I had it very easy in Plagueis because we all knew he died. I just got that over with right away. First chapter, he's dead. Then I go back and tell the backstory.
All right. Well, I want to open sort of the discussion to you all, and just let's talk about Sith.
I'd like to throw it to you guys a little bit. I'd like to hear some opinions. All right.
I'd like to know, assuming that you've written for the third prominent Force order in the franchise, what's the most significant difference between the Sith and the Jedi? Assuming Brass got right.
That's not how you're.
Normal.
I mean, I worked on some of that. That's a tough one. Let me give it a shot. So I believe the Jensari, it's been a while, were invented by Mike Stackpole. I looked into the history of it a bit. There was actually, I think, a historical group that Mike might have based the Jensari off of. And they had this philosophy of basically being, in the gray area. They were taught Sith teachings, but not in the sense that Sith teachings were evil, something like that. And I would say the contrast between the Jensari and the Jedi, when it came down to it, be careful about this, it might have not been that significant, and I do think that's why ultimately Luke, I do believe, invited them to join his Jedi Academy, or the Jedi Praxium. I think it raises the question about whether there are any teachings that are inherently evil. I think what Mike was trying to communicate there is that maybe there is not, that maybe it is very strongly intertwined with intention, whether some kind of teaching actually ends up being implemented in an evil way or not. And I think that's why Luke was down with inviting them into the Praxium.
It sort of goes back to George's, I think, original or early conception of the Sith as merely dark Jedi. This is, Sith evolved through the films, but originally they were dark Jedi, so they weren't really fully evil yet. Yeah.
I have a question for both of you right here. Your stories kind of connect on a weird way, but with Plagueis the Dead, how do you give Plagueis the Dead that makes sense? And with Dark Temperance, how do you give such a story that, like for me, when I first heard the 10th anyway, I just wanted to read it over and over again because I just found it so just compelling that he lived in this forever loop of death. So that'd be my question to you both: is how you these characters that are almost like unstoppable humans, how do you give them something that makes sense? And like for me, I always want to say oh, they could still be alive, and somehow, some way they could, that's, so how do you do something that feels right?
You want to take that?
Well, the Tempest Way thing, that was, they called me up and said, hey, we got a slot inside it. You want to do like a Tempest story? And I said, who's that? You know, obviously, I don't know. But, yeah, honestly, I got that whole story, was based off my recollection of my favorite, Harlan Ellison horror story. I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream. It's a beautiful story. It's amazing. And because I thought that, just that line, type of story is so horrific. I was trying to think of what is the worst thing that could happen to someone who's trying to live forever. Granted his wish.
And I mean, this gets to the heart of the Sith always being paranoid about being killed by their acolyte or by their, I mean, the mentor is always at risk. And I mean, this is what drives them. And so you can never turn your back on anybody. I mean, we see it happening over and over through the storylines.
Did you ever feel that Plague is dying because he got drunk? You know, that it seems like almost like that would never happen. Like he just he could never let himself be defeated in such a weak way. And I think he had
Questions for us in the back. Yeah, we can hear him.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, here it is.
I think he's asking whether how someone like Plagueis could allow himself to get drunk and be offed by Sidious. But again,
That's official canon. I mean, I don't know about the drunk.
well,
it's incredible.
it is. Although I read recently that, or I was told that Lucas actually meant that story to be a lie when Palpatine tells it to Anakin. So
I was
I mean, so
confused.
that. So I don't know where that leaves us. I mean, was it a lie? Did you actually exist or not? I don't know.
Hi. I feel like George Lucas's writing was based on The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell.
Get the
So-
mic right.
What?
The microphone.
Oh, thank you. So I feel like the Star Wars was based on George Lucas's. I feel like he was inspired by Joseph Campbell.
Yes.
So is there like a villain's journey or?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, well, normally the hero would go through a dark period in his or her own journey. I don't know that specifically, like the shadow character would have his or her own storyline, but it's an interesting idea. I don't think that Campbell ever addressed that in terms of an evil mythos.
Perhaps that they see like a road in front of them, and then the hero would go this way, and
Yeah.
then the villain would go that way.
Mhm.
When approached with the same exact decision.
That makes sense, yeah.
A little follow-up on the Plagueis and Tenebrous stories, because together they are one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars media, period. I can't read one without the other. I was surprised to learn that they came out not only so close together, but the Tenebrous Way actually came out several months before Plagueis. I was wondering if there was any collaboration or just through the Force you guys connected, because
They
so
sent me
well
they sent
together.
me some stuff from, because he was, I think you were already done with that book when I was writing
Yeah.
Tenebrous Way. So
Yeah,
I think I may have read it in draft.
I have a question for Mr. Stover. So, you've said in interviews that you originally intended for the dragon in Revenge of the Sith to be a metaphor for Anakin's rage.
That's
But
right.
that got rejected by Lucasfilm because they said George Lucas's interpretation of the dark side is that its driving force, no pun intended, was not anger, but fear. So you rewrote the dragon to represent fear. Could you elaborate on that?
I absolutely can, but I ain't gonna. I will tell you exactly why. I tell that story in some detail in the appendix of the upcoming. They literally tell the story of how the Sun Dragon, what was originally the Sun Dragon, became the Dead Star Dragon. That story is in that book, and I'm not going to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it.
What do you think about how the Sith ritualized killing a loved one or loved ones just to get into the order?
Did they?
That's something that
I mean, maybe if you're talking about in the context of, the relationship between Anakin Skywalker and Padme.
And Palpatine and his family?
What do we know about it? See, I've fallen behind in my reading. What do we know about Palpatine's family? About the son who rejected him and went to live somewhere else? Does anybody know that full story?
Oh, yeah.
So did Palpatine get married? I mean, it doesn't matter. Did he get married? He had a son, right?
Yes, he did.
His son is a clone?
That was some of my work, actually. But he didn't kill Triclops, so, yeah.
Oh, his parents. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, Palpatine killed his parents. Yes. That was out of rage, and probably sent him down the dark road.
And Trachis was his fake son, actually.
And also, Carl Jung kept talking about the exteriorization phenomenon, and how this would happen,
is your name Matt?
Yes, I was going to ask. We met last time. It's good to see you again. I'm not even.
See you. Welcome back.
I was going to ask. So, obviously, you can only have so many people on a panel. I'm curious if any of you have someone else you think has written Sith really well in the Star Wars universe that you wish could be here.
Drew. But I would also throw in there Dan Wallace, and maybe not something that you think about right away. Worked with Dan a lot. He did the Book of Sith. I couldn't believe how he pumped out that book as fast as he did. That guy is such a fast writer, and he had such a vision for that book, and he just did an amazing job covering, multiple Sith over vast stretches of time and generations, and obviously Dan Wallace.
I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll go to final comments.
So I have a quick question. I was just wondering, to what extent, you mentioned how, it's not just psychopathy for a lot of Sith, there's some other thing at play. I've done social work, and I'm just wondering to what degree Sith are just kind of like a poor mental health outcome. Because they're really they're not letting go of their emotions, they're not balancing their lives, they're pushing people away. I mean, I guess my question is just what you think about that, and then also, is it even possible to be a functional Sith in terms of a long time? It just seems like a self-destructive lifestyle.
Well, it certainly would be. But that's not high on their list of considerations. The personal satisfaction of companionship is not a thing for the Sith, right? The same. You could almost define them by their inability to feel a connection with other living beings, right? The only thing that matters, like I said. I was thinking about what you said about Palpatine's parents, and I was relating that. Actually, I don't know if you did it on purpose, but I was relating that to Anakin, and thinking about how, in some ways, there is a sort of classic Sith journey of someone who is kind of well-intentioned they do something that lets them realize they're not, they do something horrible, but then they have to find a way of justifying that to themselves. That I was not being horrible, that's just the way the world is, it's what I had to do. And that transition from I did something wrong to I did what I had to do, that's the trick right there, that's the flip for me.
Okay, we have 5 minutes, so I think we can do one quick question and then final thoughts.
What do you think the Jedi could learn from the Sith?
I think about that for a second. The Jedi can learn. Maybe not to be so reductive in their thinking or so dogmatic that they need to open up a little bit more. I mean, it's interesting, this whole light and dark thing, because sort of in Eastern philosophy, there's yin yang, where either one is particularly the right way, that one is necessary for the other. So maybe the Jedi needed to, the Jedi Order needed to embrace that a little bit more. That would be my thought.
I'm not against it. Yeah, I'm not sure I have anything to add. I thought I did.
I'm right there with Jim. I think the line in Revenge of the Sith that epitomizes this is when Obi-Wan yells out, "Only a Sith deals in absolutes," which of course is an absolute.
It's over and over and over.
So the question there is he stating this with the full consciousness of the paradox, of what he's expressing? If he isn't, it's a dogmatic statement, and they could probably benefit from a little more self-analysis about.
What they need, in my opinion, what they needed was some of the adaptability that Luke has, which is they have a lot of rules that became pretty calcified by tradition. That's why they need some help. But Luke's choice is always love.
Yes.
Right? That's why he wins. He chooses love over fear. Which is like that's the fundamental conflict of the whole hero's journey thing. That you love something so much that you do these things that terrify you, right? Or whatever. You love more than you fear. And
I love it.
yeah.
All right, we have 3 minutes. Final thoughts on the Sith. Go.
I don't know where. I'd be curious I'm curious to see where it's going to go, because like I said, this franchise keeps changing and expanding. I don't know what's ahead for the Sith or for the Force itself. Whether there's going to be things are going to come full circle. But I mean, I think it's an interesting entry point for philosophical study, the whole Sith and Jedi situation.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta dance with the dark side, man. You talked about the Gens RI. Jim mentioned about the shadow. The Gens RI, when I worked on them, what I tried to develop was this idea from Tom Beach, who did the Dark Empire series, is the idea of integrating the shadow, right? So back to the yin and yang concepts, we all have a shadow, and that the Sith are the explicit expression of this idea. So sometimes you gotta dance with the dark side.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to have more to say about that.
You said it all, and so on.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Final word. I think that what the Sith, philosophically part of what they do is that they not just valorize selfishness, but they focus on themselves. That's what they're thinking. They're thinking about how they feel, what they want, how they want the world to be around them. The Jedi are thinking about other people, and not how, it's not how I want the world to be, but what's best for you. If you know, I'll help you do it. That I think is that's light side and dark side to me. I think of personally, this is entirely headcanon. I think of the Force as fundamentally representing just life itself. And that's why the dark side and the light side aren't separate. It's all one thing. It's just that what they call the dark side are the behaviors that are often instinctive for us that tend to cut us off from our connections with other people. That's what it is.
We should have talked about Lucifer. Some other panel.
Yeah.
That's definitely
Well,
one
thank
beyond
you
though.
all so very much. Let's give a lovely round.